Scientists injected the DNA of a king cobra into their assistant's body. Before long, his body underwent a bizarre transformation. Not only did his skin become covered in snake scales, but even his head began to evolve into that of a snake. However, just as he was about to fully transform into a snake, the assistant couldn't resist letting out a fart. This caused the effects of the experiment to dissipate, interrupting it on the spot. The assistant ended up becoming a half-human, half-snake creature. The doctor was furious because this was not the result he had anticipated. Without hesitation, he sold the assistant off cheaply to the circus in town. The owner of this circus was also not quite normal, but it was this risky acquisition that kept the circus running. Relying on their unique snake human, they attracted a large number of customers. Everyone marveled at the existence of the snake human, unaware that it was a result of human mutation. Meanwhile, on the other side, the doctor, because his previous assistant had mutated, found his old friend who was a university professor to introduce him to a college student to be his new assistant. Seeing the doctor's arrogant attitude, the professor initially didn't want to help, but being old friends for many years, the professor finally agreed to help. So, he introduced a college student named David to be the doctor's assistant. Once they found an assistant, the doctor immediately drove to the experimental base in the wilderness. As soon as he entered, a beautiful woman came out. She was the doctor's daughter, and when David saw the beautiful woman, he was even more determined to stay. Then the doctor led David into the laboratory, introducing him to various snake species and telling him which ones were non-venomous. Personally, let David try it himself. Then the doctor introduced him to a variant turtle from Malaysia. Seeing the friendly and approachable doctor, David's trust in him instantly increased. Seeing that David was already convinced, the doctor took the opportunity to introduce him to the laboratory's venomous snakes. The ones with red labels are highly poisonous snakes. Even with serum, there may not be enough time for rescue, and David's job involves extracting snake venom. So the doctor falsely claimed, for safety reasons, that he needed to inject David with snake venom antibodies. In reality, he injected a modified DNA of the king cobra extracted by the doctor. David thus became the doctor's second little white mouse. And the doctor, so as not to make the effects too obvious, chose to inject in small batches over multiple sessions. He pretended to care about David's well-being. David thought the doctor was taking good care of him, and laughed foolishly. Yet David failed to notice that after injecting the serum, he inexplicably felt a strange affinity for the king cobra. And when David had dinner at 5 p.m., he showed extreme drowsiness. The doctor chuckled and said it was a normal phenomenon, and there might also be fever and other symptoms. Little did he know that this was the king cobra DNA wreaking havoc. David began to enter the poisonous illusion of DNA modification, and it lasted for a week. When David woke up again, he found a crowd gathered at his doorstep. Doctor hosted a performance extracting venom from a king cobra. The released snake kept attacking the doctor, who employed the trademark moves of a snake charmer, swiftly waving his hands. As it turned out, cobras have a strong animosity towards fast-moving objects. The doctor continuously used his left hand to draw the cobra's attention, then raised his hand high. A sudden move almost stunned the crowd, but just as the doctor was about to subdue the cobra, suddenly, Old Six appeared with a camera, taking photos. This nearly cost the doctor his life, but his quick reflexes saved him. With a lingering fear, the doctor threw away his cane and decided not to perform anymore. He approached the cobra and unleashed a big move, swinging his arms rapidly. Then, he swiftly grabbed it, and the crowd cheered for the doctor's spectacular performance, giving him some sponsorship. Later, David asked how much he earned from the performance. To David's surprise, it was just a few dollars, and yet the doctor risked so much. However, that very night, as David was washing up, he noticed his face starting to peel, with a large patch on his forehead. To prevent David from suspecting, the doctor told him it was a normal reaction to the serum, and that the new skin could resist snake venom. But at that moment, the police suddenly showed up, investigating the disappearance of a former assistant. However, they found nothing unusual in the laboratory. After the investigation yielded no results, the doctor asked them to help carry a python into the basement. The two policemen, still suspicious, wanted to continue questioning, but the python opened its huge mouth, and they hastily left. Back at the residence, the doctor injected David with a second dose of serum, but he didn't notice the snake's archenemy continuously howling towards him. At this moment, the man's affection for the cobra grew stronger. He often couldn't help but stare blankly at the cobra. In the following period of time, the doctor gave David more injections, and had his daughter entertain him with good food and drink. As a result, the relationship between the two also got better and better. One day, the two went out shopping by car. He drove the car to the lakeside, and started inviting the girl to go swimming. The girl intended to refuse by saying she didn't bring a swimsuit, but couldn't resist David's continued invitations. Seeing David about to jump into the river, the girl asked David to cover his eyes, and then ran into the river herself. After this incident, the relationship between the two quickly warmed up. Later, the two went to the amusement park in town to play. David saw a snake charmer performance in the circus, and couldn't wait to go watch it, but the girl said their house was full of snakes, and wasn't interested. So, David, filled with curiosity, went in, and saw the snake charmer the boss had mentioned. What will happen next? Let's look forward to the next episode. A circus bought a monster and exhibited it to people, but David was alarmed when he saw that the snake man's eyes were human. He quickly left, wanting to tell his girl waiting outside, only to find her being harassed by a thug. David intervened, and a fight broke out as the thug refused to back down in front of the girl he loved. Despite the chaos, the police arrived just in time to stop the brawl. Back home, Doctor immediately checked David's condition and found him relatively unharmed, which relieved him. However, the thug, feeling aggrieved, sneaked to the girl's place, climbed her balcony, only to be caught by her pet python. Startled, the thug fell to the ground, and by the time David and the girl rushed there, the python had been killed by the thug. Seeing her beloved pet gone, the girl was heartbroken. The thug, realizing the trouble he was in, fled the scene quickly. Meanwhile, to avenge his daughter's python, the doctor retrieved a venomous black mamba from a box, put it in a briefcase, and went to the thug's house. While the thug was showering, Doctor tossed the mamba into his bathroom. The snake instantly bit the thug's leg, and with just a little venom, enough to kill 8 people, the thug collapsed in pain and died. Thinking the score was settled, Doctor returned home, only to find his house burglarized. He realized that his assistant David, whom he had raised for years, had betrayed him. To ensure his daughter's safety, Doctor forbade her from seeing David, claiming it was for her own good. When his daughter questioned him, Doctor almost let slip the truth but managed to divert her attention by giving her a task to fetch goods from out of town. Once his daughter was safely away, Doctor confronted David about his mutation and deceived him into drinking a potion. Actually, it's a drug that accelerates mutation. In order to speed up the testing process, the doctor tricked him into taking a potion again. David wanted to go to the hospital for a checkup, but under the doctor's coaxing and deception, he was told that after this injection, he would be completely cured. As a college student, David surprisingly believed the doctor again, without noticing at all. The cat kept barking wildly at himself. At this moment, someone suddenly visited outside. The doctor instructed David to stay in the lab and not to go out, while he went out to greet the visitor. It turned out to be David's old teacher, Professor Carl. He came this time, just to see how his student was doing here, but the doctor firmly refused to let him into his house. Knowing the doctor's eccentric temper, Professor Carl left with relief, but on the way, he felt more and more uneasy about this matter. So he parked his car on the main road and quietly returned to the doctor's house along a small path. Unfortunately, his whereabouts were discovered by the doctor. In order to prevent his experiment from being exposed, the doctor quickly grabbed a weight and ran outside, secretly followed behind Professor Carl. At this point, Professor Carl had already reached the window, ready to see his student, but he found that his face was actually evolving into a snake-like appearance, which shocked him instantly. At this moment, the doctor, who arrived suddenly, knocked him out. David only realized he had been deceived when he saw the scene, but now it was too late. He wanted to pick up the phone to call the police, but found that his body simply wouldn't obey. Doctor locks a man in a basement and leaves him to die with snakes. The professor, chained and unable to struggle, is eventually swallowed alive. Meanwhile, on the other side, the doctor's daughter arrives at the designated location, but the staff tells her there is no such thing as the brown spot pit snake she is looking for. If you're interested in snakes, you can go to the circus to see a creature that is half man and half snake, and strangely enough, its eyes are blue. The old man says that even though he has participated in 52 years of tours, he has never seen anything so strange. The girl, hearing this, is puzzled, because she has also never seen a snake with blue eyes. She then rushes to the circus as fast as she can, but finds that it has already closed its doors. Even if she offers more money, the owner refuses to let her in. However, determined to solve the mystery, she sneaks inside. She sees the snake man and realizes that his eyes are identical to her father's former assistant. It suddenly clicks for her. Her father has been conducting these human snake experiments all along. She is completely overwhelmed and cannot believe her father could be so. She then remembers David, her father's assistant, and wonders if her father is also transforming him into a snake man. She doesn't dare to think about it and rushes home immediately in her car. At the same time, the police receive a report from Professor's wife, saying that her husband has not come home since visiting the doctor 2 days ago. The police, hearing about the doctor, immediately spring into action. The doctor's daughter and the police race home as fast as they can, but find that David has already been controlled by her father. Her father injects him with a faster-acting mutation serum and brainwashes him, telling him that he is about to become the first successful evolution of a human, opening the door to a new life for you. The future world will be yours. David's scales start to become more prominent, his internal organs shrink, and his head begins to mutate, becoming less and less human. In the end, he completely merges with the snake, his body transforming at an unbelievable rate in just a few minutes. David ultimately becomes a new species of king cobra. The doctor is thrilled beyond words, and he throws David into the water, then releases his beloved king cobra to fight him. But the doctor, too excited to be cautious, is bitten by the king cobra on his third leg. The venom quickly spreads through the doctor's body, and he eventually falls lifeless. At this point, David wants to escape, but is targeted by a predator, the mongoose, that has been living on a diet of poisonous snakes. David is no match for the mongoose. The doctor's daughter arrives home in a frenzy, only to find her father already dead from the venom. The king cobra tries to sneak up on her, but is thankfully stopped by the police who arrive just in time. She rushes inside the house, only to find David dying from the mongoose's bites. She calls out to him, but cannot explain to anyone what has really happened. David ultimately dies, and that is how the story ends. Follow me for the next part, which will be even more exciting.